Hi, I'm Alan Ross, and I have a guest with me today as the managing editor of APC Technologies, which is Transformer Technologies and Power Systems Technologies and Women in Power Systems. I'm delighted to be able to interview thought leaders about changes that are taking place within the power industry. My guest today is Ron Harper. He is the president and CEO of JFE Shozi Canada Power. I know I got to get that one in there, right, Ron?
You can just call us JFE, Alan. That's fine.
Okay, I'll call it JFE from this point on. Ron has embarked on something unique, and I think the whole of JFE, he'll talk about that. But Ron, I know one of the things that is from your website, it says that you want to sustain an efficient, modern electrical generation, transmission, and distribution grid. Well, good luck with that, because we desperately need it. And then there are three words that we're going to focus on. One of them is drive. You all are talking about a drive to a new era. Things are changing rapidly, and products and services and everything are changing. It's decentralization, digitalization, decarbonization. Those are the three buzzwords. And you are in support. JFE supports the electric power industry with the products and services that you provide. Accelerate, which is this transition that we're on to a lot of changes. You behind me, I'm at a company today that's talking about hydrogen as the power source of the future. Whether it is or not is debatable, but accelerate change is what we're talking about. And then lastly, go beyond the normal transactional part of business. So you've taken all of those things and you've kind of made that a passion and a vision for JFE Canada. Tell me a little bit about how you first of all started on that commitment. Somewhere there's a genesis, right? And I know your background, you have been heavily involved as the chairman, I think, of the Association of Manufacturing, the AMA, is that what it is?
The AME, Association of Manufacturing Excellence.
AME, the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. So that's some background of manufacturing. Obviously, you brought whatever you did there for a decade, and you brought some of that thinking into what you're trying to accomplish with JFE Canada. But tell me a little bit about the genesis. Where did this all come from?
Well, our business, I've been with, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to share our story and a little bit about our thinking of the future. The genesis of it, I think, there wasn't a big bang or a spark or anything like that. I've been in this industry now for just over 25 years. Our business is predominantly supplying electrical transformer OEMs across Canada, the US, Mexico. We have placed a lot of priority and a lot of work with our clients on energy efficiency over the last 10 or 15 years, particularly, trying to make sure that our electrical grid is as efficient as it can be, and that it is able to operate in the most effective way as possible. I know you said that you talked a little bit about our mission in the future. We're certainly not going to deal with that big challenge on our own, but we want to communicate with our team here that we have an important role to play in decarbonization and expanding and developing our electrical grid, and that we need to take ownership of it. We're a small part of the whole picture, but it's an important part, and I think we need to take ownership. So it started really initially in terms of electrical efficiency. And if you think about, and you made reference to some of our roots of our thinking with the AME. The AME really is an organization that promotes and develops the thinking around lean practice or the Toyota production system, which is really, if you boil it down to it, about delivering the results that your clients expect with the least amount of resources that you use in that process. And I think the way we generate energy to our society, you can apply the same thing. There's a lot of waste every day. You look at things that are waste in our energy systems, whether it's a car idling in the parking lot with nobody in it, or just sitting there for 15 minutes. there's all kinds of places that waste can find their way through that. So I think some of that thinking found its way in the roots or the genesis of what we're doing. But really, it's about looking at the future. Our business is fortunate to be part of a large organization, a large Japanese organization called JFE, and a huge commitment's been made to carbon neutral position by 2050. And really, we want to be a business leader around the world in energy efficiency, the path to carbon neutrality, and also creating sustainable energy sources. And as we shift away from more reliance on hydrocarbon-based fuels, gasoline, oil, et cetera, to a more sustainable, clean electrical energy, that is a big part of our company's capability and history, and we want to be part of the leadership of the future with that.
So let me, because you said something, when you say decarbonization, is it decarbonization in the process of how you produce a product and in the product itself? I mean, talk a little bit about that, because that right now is one of the buzzwords I hear. And there are a lot of people that can't describe how they're helping on that journey. They just say, hey, decarbonize, right? Well, what does that mean specifically for the process and the products?
Decarbonization is a important initiative of our company. Our wider company's initiative is to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. And certainly with our steel manufacturing sector in Japan, it's going to cost an enormous amount of money, and there's a huge investment to decarbonize, because globally, steel raw materials, the production of steel represents about 9 to 10% of the global carbon emissions. All of our products go into electrical equipment using electrical steels and are made predominantly of electrical steels. So our first step in working on a carbon reduction strategy is to work with our strategic suppliers on raw materials, because that's the biggest source of improvement that we can create. So we have a couple of suppliers, including JFE Steel, our sister company, and ThyssenKrupp Electrical Steels, who we're working in a very advanced way at providing carbon reduced materials to our market. Of course, in terms of our own processes, we source a lot of material globally today. So there's transportation impacts and other impacts in terms of how we bring our materials to us that are contributing to carbon emissions. Our own processes here, even though they're relatively efficient, we do use a lot of natural gas, and therefore the combustion product of natural gas is part of our processes, and what we do in terms of shipping product and work with our clients on that. So we're really taking an end-to-end approach with this, and today really promoting with several of our key clients carbon neutral products and carbon neutral steel materials, so that they can work towards achieving their objectives as well, the same utilities.
That was a question I've got for you. It's one thing for your company to make a commitment, and you just said this is not a cheap commitment to make. There's a real commitment that you're doing. So I'm going to go down two tracks. One of them is your customers. How are they? What has been the response from the marketplace to what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, we're in early days with that, but we have spoke to 3 companies about our carbon reduced raw materials and potentially supplying them during the first half of 2023. I guess we were a little apprehensive about what the reaction was going to be.
Right.
But I've been really pleasantly surprised at the excitement, enthusiasm that our 3 clients that we've decided to discuss this with have embraced it. They see an enormous opportunity for their company. They didn't know that there were green steel materials available in this product category yet. And I've been really pleased with that, because one of the big challenges and discussion points that we've had is in terms of planning this is how receptive is our market going to see, the end users, the utilities, are going to have with these types of products, because we're not really sure if legislation is going to force them to change, or it's going to be pressure to do the right thing or just an opportunity. But it does look like the receptiveness has been really positive, at least in a small group of utilities and clients, and that is going to come without regulation, which I'm really excited about. And hopefully it creates the kind of leadership and the kind of momentum that this initiative needs now, because carbon neutral 2050 is only 20 years away. It sounds like a long time, but we got a heck of a lot of work to do.
And so, and it is going to take a commitment. In Canada, I think the utility and the government, utility industry, the governments and industry has kind of pushed the idea that legislatively they've said, here's what we want to do. That's not so much true in the United States, but there are states, as things happen, there are states like California that are making those commitments. So legislatively, it may come slower here. Talk a little bit about how the Canadians did it, how the utilities there got together and did it.
Well, I think, I don't want to suggest that I can speak on their behalf, but I think every Canadian utility has very strong policies on carbon neutrality, strong ESG policies and initiatives and commitments that they've made. And this is in advance of any strict legislation. Canada in general, in terms of electrical energy, is pretty fortunate in terms of, I guess, call it the cleanness of our industry. About almost 80% of the electricity generated in Canada comes from what would be considered a clean source because of our large resources of hydroelectric power. So we're well ahead in that respect. However, for the Canadian government has made a pretty strong commitment on 2050, the main two areas that are going to drive that improvement and that path towards carbon neutrality are going to be electrification of our transportation systems, cars, trucks, buses, that kind of thing, and also industrial production and even producing. The production process of oil generates a lot of a lot of carbon emissions. So even though we may be a bit of a head start in terms of the electrical grid, shifting our transportation grid from oils and gas products to electricity is going to take a lot of work on growth and expansion of our grid from our utilities and a significant investment from them. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that respect. And we haven't really talked a little bit much about the conversion of our transportation system, but that's also a role that our company intends to play in the long run, is to help build the transportation sector and the automotive sector in terms of expanding electrical and hybrid production in Canada.
When I know that's going to happen, electrification of transportation is going to double the amount of power required from where we are today. We have been in a no growth area for a decade. Now, when you talk about doubling it, and it is happening, you see it happening again in California, where there's a lot more electric vehicles already creating a problem with the grid. The other part of it is they've put a lot of solar panels on roofs. And so you got people charging at home and it's become almost a closed circle. I drive my car, I plug it in at home, and I get the power primarily from my rooftop solar because the sun's always shining. So they've made that energy transition to a large extent and are making now a decarbonization commitment. That's happening all over the globe, obviously speeded up by the impact of the war in Ukraine. But I want to talk about when you make a commitment like this, you got to ask what your customers are going to do. They're going to support you. You've just addressed that. There's another one. What has been the impact on the company, on the people within JFE Canada? Is there a set, because people want to feel like they're making a difference. And so many times we can't make a difference individually, but you work for a company that's making a difference, you're making a difference. How's it been internally in the company received?
So I think the simple answer is anybody we speak to about the role that we're playing in this transformation is extremely motivated to be part of a company that's contributing that way. It's also something that part of this commitment was also to attract the right people to be part of that mission.
Yep.
You know, we really want to be a purpose-driven organization. You know, we need to meet our shareholder expectations in terms of our mission and our financial performance, et cetera. But we are really working very hard to try to attract and recruit those people that really put our future and this initiative front and center in their mind and want to have a big part in that. And you know, whether that's helping the electrical grid expand and renew and be capable of supporting the increased demand for electrical energy, or if it's being part of something of supplying materials to the emerging auto sector in terms of shifting to electric vehicles, or just any of those kinds of initiatives. People really want to have an impact on that, and if that passion gets translated in the work we're doing and the mission that we have, we think we're going to be pretty successful. You're right. You know, if you look at the transportation sector alone, right now 3% of Canadian car sales are electric vehicles. Now there's more of that in hybrids, but with the Canadian goal is to be 30% by 2030. That's only 8 years away, and 2040 is 80%, and 100% electric vehicles by 2050. And again, that sounds like a long time, but given the massive nature of the change, it's really important. And the auto industry is really critical to this part of Canada. It's the Southern Ontario is the second largest auto manufacturing center in North America. A lot of people don't know that. The conversion to electric powertrains and hybrid vehicles is really important.
Well, as your lights went off, see, this is we're going to keep that in, because the lights go off and nobody wants the lights to go off. We all want the lights to see.
Yeah.
But by the way, just as an aside, I've got to tell you, my car I think it was from Burlington, came in, my new car that was made up in Canada. So you're right. I've been waiting on that. It did come in. As we go forward, so you talk about customers, you internally, the company, internally, externally, your customers. You mentioned ESG. ESG is kind of misunderstood by a lot of people. That's environmental, social, and governmental. And what it really says is stock traded companies who used to have one measure, which was always financial. You have got to maximize the value to the shareholders. Now you can maximize the value to the shareholders. However, you can say we will be environmentally X, or we will be socially X, or we will admit. And by doing that, if you reduce the shareholder value somewhat, but you maintain that environmental, and I know the SEC in the United States is critical of that. They follow it very closely. You better say what you do. So this falls under the environmental guidelines. And I think many people misunderstand it. We do have to return a profit. Our shareholders want that, but they also want us to fix the world. And that's a really good thing. So with that, you are a leader in fixing the world. There are not a lot of people in the steel industry or the component steel industry that are talking about this. Most people are waiting for somebody else to take a leadership position. Obviously, you and JFE are taking a leadership position by the mere fact that we're doing this. What do you need from the rest of the utility industry, the power industry? What do you need them to hear and start to think about and to do? If you're the leader, then their people must follow. What do you want your followers to do?
That's a great question. And first, I'll answer why my lights went out, because I have a motion sensor on my light. So I wasn't moving, and so I turned it on by waving my hand. I wasn't moving.
That's funny.
I wasn't moving, so my lights went out. You're right. Not only I'm taking this responsibility on and role and trying to lead and educate people with this initiative, and really educate myself. You know, I've been reading a lot the last few months, and some of the reports from organizations like McKinsey, and there's countless groups that are looking at this. I think the first thing is information. You know, be open to listening to what's going on in the background, what the initiative is, why the initiative is important in terms of decarbonization, and the lack of taking initiative of that, and be proactive. So I think the first step in that is to share. What we want is to have our partners and those in the power industry to spread the news of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So many people for decades have plugged their devices into the outlet on the wall and not thought twice about where that comes from. It's really important that people educate themselves, and that we as a power industry and part of the energy industry educate people of how that's impacting them. So they can't take it for granted. They need to understand what's going to happen. And it isn't just about, oh, we all have to buy electric cars now. There's a lot more to it than that. So information and education is I would say the first part of that. The second one I would say is inspire action from other people. So I would ask everyone to challenge once they get educated and start learning about this, expect that of your partners, your suppliers, and really be an inspiration to others to make this happen. And now is really the time to do that, because you know roughly 90% of the world's economy is committed to carbon neutrality by 2050, and the only way we're going to achieve that is by acting with urgency now, not acting with urgency 15 years from now. And that isn't always our human nature to act when we have 30 or 28 years notice. So inspiration, sharing information is an important part of that. And I think the last thing I would say that I would like others to join us in is the work on innovation. So if we're innovating and being creative on new products and new ways of achieving our work, and being open to challenging ourselves to find better and new ways to, whether that's technologies or ways of thinking or just supply routes or methods, et cetera, that's going to be a really important part of what we need to do. So finding creative solutions, inspiring other people to join and educate themselves, and educating and informing themselves and others, I think is what I think I would encourage all of our partners and those people that are in the power industry to do.
Well, you have a supply chain from beginning to end. And then you do something with that product, and then it goes. And if we can communicate that message across our supply chains, I think the power industry as a whole is ready to make those commitments. We realize we're at a point that we can actually make a difference. You mentioned that about it becomes a recruitment tool for people coming into the company. We're going to take some time for some questions, Ron, but thank you for joining me on this webinar. We will take this time, and some of these questions, if we can't get to them, we're going to then put them in a chat that we can maybe respond to people. But we do have about 10 minutes now to talk about some questions. First one is, it's kind of related to what I asked, but this one is much more pointed. You know, doing what you are doing and committing to as a company costs money. How do you convince customers to come along and share in that cost? And I'm going to add to it, I'm going to say customers and suppliers. This has to be a shared cost. How do you convince people to do it?
That's a fantastic question, and one that occupies a lot of our conversations, especially in the early days of this. Some people calling it on the bleeding edge of change. I think there's a couple things I'd say, and you're absolutely right. This is an enormous cost, especially to the steel industry. JFE alone has committed billions of dollars just in the next 5 to 10 years to start the process of reducing the carbon emissions and out of the blast furnaces in our factories in Japan. And the same thing with our partner Thyssen. They've done the same thing. They've announced, you know, billions of dollars in spending to do this. So I think part of it is also educating. People need to understand that this doesn't come at a normal price of change and evolution. It's an invitation, I suppose, to do something significant. The way that we're dealing with our initial clients that we're working on this is to tap into the messaging and marketing of this product. So each one of our clients we're working with on this, we're talking also to their sales and marketing teams, because they want to use this as a promotion and a feel-good story for their company, internally and externally. I think the conversation with respect to any premiums that come from the products and premiums and investment that we do needs to go from end to end in the supply chain. You know, we can't expect the steel industry to spend billions of dollars without the ultimate end users contributing to that, and those along the way participating. So it's really about educating our utilities, educating our OEM clients that support those utilities, and it may sound a little crass, but putting their money where their mouth is. If you look at any utility, they have, you know, they'll have, especially a larger utility, will have pages and pages and pages of their ESG policy, their carbon reduction policy, and our challenge is to put that commitment on the table when it comes to your buying decisions. And it's really trying to make that connection. If you're really sincere about the commitments you're making to your responsibility as a utility and a large employer, to not only the province or state that you're in or the city you're in, if that's an honest and sincere commitment, then there we go again.
This is a metaphor. You realize it, don't you? It's a metaphor.
It's a perfect metaphor. I think that you know, I think that goes a long way, because this ultimately will be legislated at the level it gets legislated, but that can be slow. It can be, you know, legalistic and debated. We're trying to motivate people to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I did one time speak to with one of our clients and one of the Canadian utilities about this. And I really asked the question, is this going to be only going to be governed and financed by a utility who ultimately needs to pay for this product in, let's say, a power transformer? Is it going to be, are you going to only act on this when it requires legislation to do that, or are you going to act before that? And it was an interesting answer, one I didn't expect. The answer was, well, I know there's always going to be pressures from some people to hold off and wait until the legislation comes and we're forced to pay more. However, the other side of the thinking is expectations from employee groups inside of utilities are quite high, that the employer that they work for does what they say they're going to do, especially for the future. And especially those with good conscience and those that are younger will put a lot of pressure on their organizations that have grand policy statements on this to actually fulfill that with their decision making. And I think even though it is visionary, we need to help influence our clients, the OEMs and the end user utilities, to make commitments early, not just for the good of our society and community, but also to send the right message to their employees and to the communities that they operate and serve. Because I think there's a lot of consensus that we want to, and that we need to improve our environmental conditions. And you know, every summer we seem to see different different reasons that, or different impacts in terms of how our climate is reacting back to us. And I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised in terms of the speed of reaction.
You mentioned two of the people. I think, it used to be that utilities saw their customers as ratepayers. That's what they were. Now they see them as customers. I think there's a pressure from customers to say, what are you doing to advance the environmental factors we're talking about? It is a great message for a utility to be able to share it. What are you doing? The other point is, if we get it in the specifications, then it isn't about price. It's about meeting the specifications. And I think that's got to come next. You got to have the boldness to say, look, we want to specify a product that has this kind of component, this kind of decarbonization. And then price doesn't become doesn't become the issue. So I think you're on the right path to do that. And I love the point that you said, inspire and educate. It's that constant thing, and it's communicate that we're actually doing something positive, and you could be part of it. So pay a little bit more for your electricity, pay a little bit more for your transformer, pay a little bit more for your, and guess what? We solve a lot of world problems. Got another one for you. So this is similar to this one, but different. So in this journey to implement, I'm going to say implement your vision. It said visionary principles, but what have been the biggest obstacles, and how have you, give me one of the biggest obstacles, but before you go to another one, how did you overcome that?
Well, I think we're early enough in the journey that the biggest obstacles are ahead of us as opposed to behind us. I'm anticipating that. And really, and I think this is part of what really is encouraging for us. We have not faced any significant obstacles with this inside of our company, inside of our shareholders, or with the strategic suppliers that we're working with. Maybe we'll face bigger challenges as we widen it, because we can't just buy from a couple of raw material suppliers. We need to buy from a wider group of suppliers, and we need to make sure that this is all economically viable, that the end users are actually paying for this. I think but like I said, I think the biggest hurdles are there to come. From a principle perspective, really the only point of any discussion that we've had in any negative way is how this is going to get paid for. Nobody says this isn't the right thing to do. If it was free, then it would be extremely easy, because there would be no resistance. The challenge is going to come when the billions of dollars that need to be spent to change some of our processes, to change some of our raw material sourcing, to change some of the steel manufacturing processes, as an example. It's going to be sharing that burden of cost and making sure that end users, whether they're industrial customers for electricity, the person charging their electric car, or the homeowner, they need to be the ones that we all need to pull together on this. All together we can be successful with this. It can't just rest on any one individual. And I think that the challenge is going to be to get everybody work together and contributing their part to that. But I really don't think anywhere we've seen any resistance other than the challenge and question of how all of this investment and this change is going to be paid for.
That message has got to get out. And as you said, you've talked about inspiration and education. And as that message gets out, hopefully panels like this, a forum like this, allows you to get the message out and get feedback. And I think that's something else that we need. Is there's a lot of, you can make a big change, and you can think, hey, we'll make a giant leap forward. I think this leap forward that we're going to have to make is going to have to come with incremental change from a lot of people. And if everybody knows that, hey, I can make a change, I can pay a little bit more, I can put it in the spec, I can do something, then we can meet some of these very lofty goals of decarbonization and digitalization. I mean, we're trying to do that, and decentralization. There's a lot of D's we're trying to get off right here. One last question for you, and it's going to be a simple one, because you've addressed these challenges and you've addressed a lot of what you got to do. But you personally, so this is, I'm going to shorten it down here, but you personally have made a commitment to this as the president and CEO. For you personally, why?
That is a simple answer to that question. I think that we as leaders in business or in society or government have a responsibility to take care of the future and for future generations. And I don't take that responsibility lightly. I've been given the opportunity to be in a position of influence, one that I can, I can't make the whole change by any means, but I can make the change and have some positive impact. So I think that that's an important part of my responsibility. It really is that, to look out for future generations. My family, my wife and I are having our first grandchild in January. And I've tried to work and live my professional life with one simple approach, and it's so far served me. I need to be able to get up in the morning and look myself in the mirror and say, you did the best you could. And if that, regardless of what the results are, if I can do that, then I'm okay. And part of this is that, if I look out 20 years from now, when I'm unlikely working, I'll be doing something probably, but not likely working in a job like I have today. I'll look back and say, did I do enough at that point in time? I want to be able to say yes to my children, my grandchildren, and to say that I did my part to fulfill this. I also look at it as an important responsibility in terms of the people in our team and providing the future for them and their families, and a company that not only has good principles, good values, and a strong purpose and mission. If I can help them have a more fulfilling work life, then I've fulfilled my responsibility as well. That's just part of why I do what I do, why I have lots more years left in me before I consider retiring, because this is all happening I tell people this has all happened to me on the 16th hole of my golf round, not on the 3rd. So
Yeah.
My JFE colleagues joke with me that I can't retire for 20 years, but that's not likely going to be the case. But that's my answer to that question.
Good. So you epitomized my philosophy, was always leave it better than you found it. No matter what it is, leave it better than you found it. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. So this has been a webinar showcase of JFE Shoji's commitment to decarbonization and the future of the power grid, modernization, everything that's going on. And I think, Ron, I just got to say, your challenge goes far beyond what your company does alone to the industry. And it's a challenge that the industry as a whole needs to hear and learn. And if you bring a lot of suppliers along with you, and we can get specifications changed, and we don't wait on government, we will make it a better place for your coming granddaughter and my recently born granddaughter, less than 1 year old. And it does change everything when you hold that baby and you realize you don't want to leave her a polluted, nasty, dirty world. It's going to be a great future for them if you and I and everybody that listens to this takes their part. So thank you very much for joining me. And this has been an APC Media Technologies presentation.
Thank you, Alan.